Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Harebrained Games. This is a review today of a game called Living Planet. It's by Christophe Boelinger, who is known for games such as Earth Reborn, one of the finest tactical strategy games I've ever played, and Archipelago, which is a game of semi-cooperative nature that had you exploring and exploiting the rich islands of the Caribbean. Living Planet takes place in space. Its backstory is related to humans needing to find living room and discovering resources and materials that gave them planets to discover and exploit as well, except that this way, the planet itself fights back. It's a game for 2 to 4 players, although there are limited solo options within it. So without further ado, let's take a look in the box.
Okay, let's take a look at Living Planet and see what's in the box. First off, you have a tile, a lone starter tile. They differentiate between 2, 3, and 4 players, but you'll notice a large stack of tiles, and these are the tiles that are going to grow the map over the course of the game. You're also going to get money chits in the form of square, like, cybernetic pieces of something or other. Each player is going to have their own little cubby hole here, which gives them a little bit of information about the game, where they're going to hide the action cards they're going to play, planet cards, the resources they've obtained, and their money. Now, that's all information that's meant to be hidden away from people. What's not hidden are these are sort of the automatronic or these are tokens that show control. They're kind of, just call them control tokens. They have a name for them, but you use those to place on buildings, and that basically gives you control in order to be able to use their resources or their special abilities. You have motorized scientists, and these can travel quite a large distance, and then you have your regular scientists. Those travel 1 hex at a time during the movement action. Everybody gets this sort of configuration, and again, this is hidden information, this is public information. Everybody starts out on the main tile. You'll see that there's a spaceport that everyone begins with. There's the dice roll value, that's important, and then there's a special ability of what these do. Right now you have a scientist ready to roll, and you have control, the control marker. I will figure out the name for them, but that's what they are effectively. Now, you have red side, and then we have this. This is sort of the meat of the action phase. Everyone's going to get a chance to play their planet cards, and when they play planet cards, they're going to change that dice value. Every turn summons the leader, and that leader is going to be able to determine what order these go in, which is hugely important. Not only that, but the leader also gets to make their card not only count for its value, but they get to use whatever special ability that card provides them. 1 through 6 for the 1 through 6 on the die. Over here, we have tokens for kind of a freebie change your dice value that you can grab and use, 1 per person per customer, for not valid in Hawaii and Canada. Alright, and then you have the market. This market board looks surprisingly subtle, but it is pretty powerful because the end of the game is all about getting points and points through money and using this to get a lot of money, buying and trading, etc. There's a deck of cards that you will use to manipulate the market. There's some natural manipulation that happens as you buy and sell goods. This is a way to sort of artificially introduce even more market volatility. And who doesn't like market volatility? These are the 5 resources available. They match the 5 resources here. How surprising. All right, that's about it, other than the buildings. Now, these are the buildings you're going to build. You have 5 resources, means you have 5 resource buildings. You have 6 tiles for each of the resources, and they are labeled 1 through 6. Anyone who's played Catan will know what that kind of means, is that when you build a building, you choose which value of the dice you want it to be activated on to obtain that resource. So, clever card play will save the day. You also have certain buildings that boost the trade action because the market is so important. You have these 3 buildings will all give you a different bonus that will make it more powerful to use that trade action to buy and sell goods. Finally, you have protection buildings. This is the mechanical mafia, so to speak. These are the guys that keep the disasters at bay. There are 3 disasters that may befall you as you exploit this planet. Geysers, earthquakes, and cyclones, tornadoes. You buy these buildings and as long as you own them and they are active, if any disaster occurs, you can pay resources to avoid having those disasters affect your tiles, buildings, your buildings and units on the given disaster cataclysm location. And that's it. Now we're going to get into an example of gameplay. All right, let's start rolling. Now I have set up a 2-player game with 2 bots. How do I do that? Well, you're always going to play with all 4 because you need all 4 players at least to be able to activate tiles and generate resources. So whatever players you don't have, you will take their planet cards and you'll just shuffle them randomly, and they're just going to be there. They're not going to act as highly intelligent AI beings. They're simply there to sort of introduce impacts and kind of mess with you in a certain way. They're also very useful for the leader. You'll find out why. Anyway, so we're going to start off. We're going to have Red be the leader. Now, Red needs to choose a card. Red will choose... let's have him choose a 3. The 3 is interesting. No, not a 3. Let's do... I'm not playing this for strategy, too, so we're going to do 2. We're going to start off light. We're going to... Ooh, I wonder what he's going to play. And because I'm just messing around... Oh, 1? That's not a good start. Let's do a 3. Alright, so everybody reveals their cards. I have a 3. I have a 2. And then we flip these cards. 5 and 3. So, wow, that's ironic. Okay, so the 5 and the 3. And then the 2 and the 3. So, now Red has a choice as the leader. How to organize this. There are stages in the game that play out, so there will be an important... Right now, these don't really matter because none of them are 6s, so there isn't any way that anybody can produce resources. So, what the heck? And there's also no cataclysm, so it's really just kind of like, whatever. Actually, no. We're going to have them go here. I'm going to go first. Right now, it makes sense for me to go first, followed by my opponent Yellow, followed by the 2 AIs. Alright, so with that, we have our scientists, our control tokens, and our mechanic workers. First thing we're going to do is produce. We look on the board, and we see if there's any tiles anywhere that have the number 2 resource on them. And then, if we don't have any of that, then we just go right to the next one. Now I can take 2 actions. What actions can I take? Well, we have Explore, which is grabbing tiles and placing them down in legal locations. Move, which means you can move every single one of our scientists. Construct lets us build. Trade lets us use the market. Grants is basically like, okay, I am out of options, so whatever's on the dice, I just get that much money. And a fate control marker means that I can take one of these, set it aside, and at a certain time in the game, at certain points, I can switch the number of my dice. This is hugely important in certain situations. It's very situational. Alright, so we're going to start off with Explore. I have 2 on the dice, so I grab 2 tiles. And I look for valid tiles. Now, this is interesting because mycelium, the mushrooms are really, really good. They do a lot of things. They let you heal your scientists. They let you add new scientists to the board. So this is not bad at all. This is interesting. I could go this way or that way. And because you have to make them all match up, so either they have to be right connected to the central tile, or they have to be connected to 2 tiles. So right now, I could go either way, but I like being able to have 2 of my mycelium buildings here, or be able to build them. And when you explore, you have to have a unit adjacent or that can move over to that area, and that's what we do. If you don't have a way to do that, you cannot build where you cannot get to. That makes sense. Alright, my first action is done. I have explored. Now, I am going to construct. How much does it cost? 5 golden cardboard tokens. Alright, now I'm going to build. What am I going to build? Well, my only option is to build one of these buildings. My choice is what kind of die, which one do I use, which number. Doesn't really matter, I get to pick which one, so I could go for 6, I could go for that. I know what I'm going to do, because I know what the dice coming up are. Yes, I do. I'm going to do 3. No, I'm going to do 5. I'm going to do 5 right there. I do that, I have to have an active scientist go visit it, and I'm able to put one of these on there, so now I'm set to go. I must be mindful, disaster 5 and 2, 5 green, 2 blue, and I dodged, or 2 blue, 2 yellow are dodged. But now whenever that card rolls up for production, I'm going to get that resource on the value of 5, and that's my second action. Now we go to Cataclysm. I have a red 2. Is there any red 2 dice on any of these tiles? There is not, and that's good. Now it's yellow's turn. Yellow is going to produce any resources that have a 3. Everybody produces resources if they have a building with a 3, and we don't. 2 actions. So with a 3, so with a 3, I didn't, I think I too will explore and see what I can find. Now I could go over there and try and compete mycelium-wise, which isn't a bad idea. Here, though, I have mycelium and I have an extra resource, which I can fluctuate with the market, and I'm going to do that. Do there, and there. Look at that. Isn't that awesome? Alright, so we've done that. That's our first action. What is our second action? I kind of feel like I should build. Yeah, I should. I'm going to go ahead and build. I'm going to pay the 5 credits. And I'm going to build on the 4. Let's build on the 4. There we go. Alright. We have built on the 4. Okay. And that's that. My 2 actions are done. So, Cataclysm. Any yellow 3s? No yellow 3s. Woo! Now it's the AI's turn, and these go very quickly. Alright, there's a 3. Does anybody have a building with a 3? We do not. So, then they don't get any actions. They just go to the Cataclysm. There are no green dice. Nothing green 3. So, we're safe so far. Now we do blue, yellow 5. Look at that. I get a mycelium token because I'm on the 5. Yay! Okay. Are there any blue 5s? They're not. Okay, so we have just finished a round of the game. A whole round. So what we do is the leader, when we pass it over, the leader has to, well, first off, we'll pick one of these resources and starve it. In other words, we're going to place it there. That marks the end of that round. Once 8 rounds are done for the short game, 12 for the full game, the game is over. Now I'm going to go ahead and just give you some examples of things you can do, but I'm not going to do it in line. For example, if for example, the green had been a 5 when it came down, and you can, yeah, if that had happened, that would activate this for a geyser cataclysm. That means that unless you have a protective building anywhere on the map that you can pay the resource for, and here's an example of the protective building, right? Grab it here. Geysers. So here we go. So this is an example of a building that you would place somewhere. It doesn't have to be on but wherever you can place it, and it does cover it up, so you could end up costing people the ability to make resources. But when you have that, if that was there and you came up with this disaster, you could pay one of the rock resources, one of these, for each tile that you wanted to avoid damage on for you. If you can't do that, then you have to decide to either wound one of your scientists. If they're out on the map and they haven't been in a building yet, they're wounded. If they're in the building, they're wounded. If they're wounded and then a cataclysm occurs, they're gone. They go back into your pool and they're done. If you only have one of these automation tokens, and in a cataclysm occurs, then you have to get rid of it, and now it's unoccupied. If it's these actually don't worry about. If you don't have the tokens on them at all, then they're just gone. They just go back, and then you can rebuild them again. So cataclysms are pretty wild. The protection buildings are helpful for avoiding certain disasters at certain times. It's nice that you don't have to have them on a given tile. They can be anywhere, and as long as you can control them, you can pay resources to avoid cataclysmic damage. The trade buildings that say this one lets you take double. Well, I need to show you the market action. The double cards let you take double the amount of market cards, so you have more options to influence the market. Normally you can only trade one resource, but this lets you trade multiple resources. You just can't buy and sell the same resource during the same turn. And then this lets you add 2 to whatever dice you use when it's time for marketing. And those are protected. So this is protected from earthquakes automatically. This is protected from tornadoes automatically, because, you know, you want to protect the financial epicenter of your universe, right? All right, and that's it. So let's go over the market action. Actually, when you take a market action, depending on the die on the value, let's do 5. Say for example, you have 4 and you want to do the market action. You would then draw 4 cards, and these go up and down on the market, and you would decide which one you wanted to play. Now there are, like I said, there are boosts that buildings give you to be able to play multiple cards, etc. But say for example we're just doing this straight up. So then you decide, what do I want to do? I can lower the value of oil, lower this, raise the value of shroom. Yes, what we'll do. So we do that, and you don't show the rest of the cards, so they don't get this kind of card count, but you place them there and you raise the value 2. That's nice. Now that you've done that, you can do your actions. Like I said, basically you can only buy 2 of any resource. That's it. That's capped, no matter how many bonuses you get. But you can sell multiple resources. So I'm gonna, if I were to sell my 2 shrooms, myceliums, 1, I would get 14. So that would give me 14 bucks. We're just gonna make change and call it 15 minus 1. Haha. And then every action raises and lowers it as well. So there's going to be a lot of board fluctuation on the market. If someone like hits the 10 and goes over, market crash, it loops back around to low point and everybody has to sell off that good. That's an interesting mechanism because it keeps people from hoarding resources, because if you think someone's got all of the mycelium and you want to bump the market up as much as you can and try and like bust them so that they have to sell it all back but at mega cheap prices, well, there you go. What else is science good for? And that's it. That's the market action. I think you've seen everything that I can show you at a glance. There's a lot of other details in the game, and the manual will kind of lead to that. Like I said, there are special bonuses when you play a card, and each of the planet cards has a different bonus, and so you just kind of read through them, and once you read through them, then you'll know what the iconography is. Some let you take planet cards back in your hand. Some double the value of production for a given resource. They're just all in there. So anyway, that's a quick synopsis of Living Planet. Now let's get into my final thoughts.
Okay, Living Planet, final thoughts. What do I think? Well, let's go over the cons first, as always. While it certainly supports less than the full player counts and does so serviceably, I would not play this with less than 4 players, except for maybe the specific scenarios for solo. Without it, even with the sort of the nominal AI inputs, it's a bit vacuous to me. And the other thing is, and this didn't bother me personally, but just as a public service announcement, this is a nastiness game that's all but assured. It is a harsh world. Made more difficult by everyone around you. It's not a stretch to say that they're gunning for you by coercing planetary cataclysms through convulsions at every opportunity. There are ways to protect yourself and mitigate that, but definitely safety considerations are at the forefront of the games that we played. And all the while that you're doing that, you're also trying to build up production and master the economy, trade, market situation. I actually found it kind of invigorating at times and annoying at times, but this is, for conflict-averse folks, this can be a little bit conflicting. It reminds me a bit of Ancient Civilizations of the Inner Sea, another game that in regards to how it played, looked all serene and peaceful, but in fact was a major take-that kind of game. And the final niggle is that the icons for the cataclysms on the tiles were pretty hard for me to read and scan through, a little subtle, but I got used to it, and honestly, it isn't that big of a deal, especially you have multiple eyes looking, going, attack there. So, before I get to the pros, I want to cover the monkey in the room. which is the inevitable comparisons to Archipelago. Because it was described as a spiritual successor, it naturally invites those comparisons. And I found that those comparisons or comparison points were relatively scant. There are simplified versions of many of the mechanics of play in Archipelago, but there's also more than enough stark differences. And these simplified versions of the several aspects of play were not enough to really say these two are alike, just one's in space and a little simpler. And it does suggest investigating this on its own merits and not assuming or disassuming the tight parallels between the two, because I didn't personally see them there. So with that, let's get to the pros. What did I like? Whereas Archipelago was a 7-layer dip of systems that all sat atop each other and were all interworking, as well as being semi-cooperative, this is more kind of a bundt cake of delight. Everything is streamlined handily, such that you can get people up to speed with this game quite a bit more easily than you could even many of his other games by far, except maybe A Dog's Life that never showed up because, well, the Kickstarter guy took the money and ran away. But other than that title of his, all the others have been very interesting, but also ones that require a ramp up. This is probably the least ramp up kind of game that I have of his. It does start off a bit slow, but then you grow, and as you grow and develop, you feel more powerful, and your opportunities become more impacting in a larger, more broad way. The planet card approach is clever because you're always having to make these trade-offs between the pips on the card and when and where to use them. Timing and situational working of these cards to play low value cards at the right time versus higher power cards is a very nifty complication. When you're the leader, it is not a token gesture. How many times has the leader just been the guy that cleans up before and after the round? This is not the leader role in Living Planet as it is. As a leader, you have immense power to forge the situations for that round such that you can really mess with people in a big way, let alone the fact that you can use the special ability of your card when you are the leader. So, yeah, you will wish you were the leader more often, and others were not as often. That's how it's been for my games. The market is simple enough to teach in a minute or so, but it has a lot of substance in how one can influence it and how it fluctuates both naturally and through artificial injection. The blackjack style bust of going over too far with value is a great way to keep hoarding resources in check. And finally, the cataclysms are horrid to receive, but sinisterly delightful to give to others. So, in summary, Living Planet is not Archipelago in space. It's its own concoction and an entertaining one, especially when played with a full complement of players. While not quite as tight and, say, perhaps even fulfilling as its touted spiritual predecessor, it is still a satisfying enough game to merit its purchase for me. I'm impressed as well with the continuing support in the form of scenarios for solo and multiplayer and extras that are being generated for it by the designers and published out through Board Game Geek and other venues. It is a B+ game with room to grow and an on-ramp that's not too steep to bring others on board to enjoy it. So with that, we thank you, take care, and we'll see you next time on Harebrained Games.